morning, everyone. My name is Tanya Vats, and I break down global politics for young audiences, which means I spend a lot of time watching the headlines, reading the news, and I spend a lot of time reading the comments as well. And I've noticed something very interesting, that before we even know the facts, we already know how we feel. Let's test this. I'm going to read two pair of headlines. I don't want you to analyze them. I just want you to notice what you feel, how you react. The first pair of headline is about an Indian rocket launch mission. Headline number 1 is from Indian media. It reads, India to create history will send one more eye into the sky. What does it make you feel? Pride, progress, and ambition. Headline number 2 is from international media about the same launch. Indian rocket launch loses control after liftoff in fresh blow to ISRO. What does this make you feel? Failure, setback, and instability. So, you haven't even heard the details of the whole story yet, and still your perception has started forming. Let's try this again. This time about the terror attack in Pahalgam. Headline number 1 from an Indian media says 26 dead, several injured in a terror attack on tourists in J&K's Pahalgam. This headline directs your attention towards terrorism. Headline number 2 from international media, Kashmir killings shatter Modi's tourism success in troubled region. This headline directs your attention towards political narrative and optics. Same story, same reality, but still two different conclusions. Before we even get to the facts, before we even get to the context, before we get to read the history, the story has already decided what the incident means. And this is what I want to talk about today. Beyond power, beyond weapons, there is something quieter that is shaping the entire world every single day. And that is stories. Not stories as in fiction, but stories as in frames. The first line, the headline, the angle, the words that make you think what you have to believe in, that make you feel what is true, who is right, who is wrong. That headline. For example, take Russia-Ukraine war. In Russia, the war is called a strategic military operation, which sounds very calculated, very limited, very strategic. But in Ukraine and the West, it is called an unprovoked invasion, which makes it sound illegal and brutal. Again, same tanks, same missiles, but different story. One person says that this is justified, the other person says this is evil. One person says that this is self-defense, the other says that this is aggression. So it is all about how stories are formed. And it's not a problem, we're all humans. Stories help our brain process complexity. They reduce chaos. They help us survive, because without stories, the world becomes overwhelming. When I started creating geopolitical content, I thought my job was going to be easy. Explain wars, explain alliances, explain trade, explain relations between countries. I thought geopolitics was about territory, resources, weapons, and yes, it is. But the biggest battle is not happening on the borders. It is happening in our minds. It is happening in the comment sections. When I post a video about a conflict or a country or a crisis, I do not get questions in the comment section like, what is the history behind this? What is the policy? No, I get responses with utmost certainty. People already know who is right. They already know who is wrong. They already know who is the villain and who is the hero. I don't even have to tell them. And then I think that I spent 3 days reading about this whole story, and people make up their minds in 3 seconds. But to be very honest, I have too. We all have. We have been there. So where does this certainty come from? Because most people do not check primary sources. They do not look at maps. They have not seen the timelines. They have not read history. But they believe in something which is older than facts. And that is stories. And stories are not all wrong. Stories are not the enemy. But what is more interesting, that in today's world, the most powerful people are not the ones, necessarily not the ones who control the land, the territory, or the resources. They're the ones who control stories. Because when you can control a story, you can control perception. When you can control perception, you control meaning. And when you control meaning, you control what people stand for, what people fear, who people vote for, what people justify, and what people never question. And social media has changed the game altogether. Because earlier, perception building was slow. Perception was built through newspapers, maybe an official speech, maybe primetime debate. But now, perception is built in real time through a scroll. So countries don't just have to act strategically, they also have to look strategic. They have to look believable. They have to look consistency. They have to maintain consistency in their presentation. For example, in the initial days of war, the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine's President Zelensky, we have never seen him in a suit, a crisp white shirt, tailored suit with cufflinks and a tie, the official or unofficial uniform of a politician. No, he was addressing the European Parliament, the American Congress, the people. He was giving interviews to news channels in a plain cotton t-shirt. And he was doing that deliberately because he was trying to send a message across that I am not a leader. I am a citizen of this country and I am in the middle of a war. And that made it believable. And then comes algorithm. Because earlier, narratives were in control of powerful people or powerful institutions like government, newspapers, or media channels. But now algorithm has taken over. An algorithm does not prioritize truth or falsehood, it prioritizes engagement. And how do we engage? By emotions, fear, pride, by identity. Nuanced stories rarely trend. What trends is heroes, villains, outrage trends. So it's not like the world might be becoming extreme, it's just that our story consumption is. Because a 12-second clip might travel faster, might build a stronger perception than a 12-page policy document. And that is not because humans are stupid, but it is just because emotions travel faster than analysis. And when this perception becomes emotional, then people defend it. And they defend it like they are defending themselves. And that is when narratives become so powerful that they can even reverse the roles. For example, invasion becomes liberation, surveillance becomes security, and censorship becomes stability. But none of this is new. Empires have been doing this since forever. What is new is the speed. And let me make this very clear. stories are not the enemies. Stories build nations. They preserve culture. Stories inspire movements. Stories make people courageous. So, storytelling is not dangerous, but unconscious storytelling is dangerous. So, what do? We don't have to be cynical or paranoid, like, oh, everything is a propaganda. No. We just need basic awareness. There are 3 questions that I use, and I genuinely believe that if more people ask those questions, then our public conversation would change. Question number 1. Who is the hero? Because narratives always assign heroism. Question number 2. Who is the villain? Because stories always need someone to blame. And question number 3, and the most important one, what is missing? Which timeline is being shortened? Which context is skipped? What facts are sitting outside the picture? And when you ask these questions, something shifts. Because you stop being a passive consumer of meaning and you start being an active participant in understanding it. And that is empowering. Because in 21st century, power is not only measured by military strength. It is measured by who gets believed, who gets labeled, who gets forgiven, who gets sympathy. And all of this is shaped by stories. So the next time when you see a headline that makes you instantly furious or instantly proud or instantly certain, pause. Not because it is false, but because it is powerful. And power deserves examination. And once you examine it, once you look at the frame and not just the picture, you gain something extraordinary. You gain clarity. And clarity in today's age of noise is also a form of power. Thank you.